Rain draped itself over the city like a thin, unsettled veil, beating along fire escapes and whispering into alleyways where steam rose from vents and wavering ghosts. Beneath a corner laundromat, where fluorescent light hummed with a reliable patience, a basement studio glowed like a small harbor in bad weather. There, the sewing machine's thrum kept time with a heart that refused to harden. Claire Dawson lived inside that rhythm. At 27, she had learned to read fabric the way sailors read skies, by touch, by texture, by 1,000 quiet warnings. Spools lined the wall in careful gradients, sun-faded coral beside storm blue, buttercream beside bruised violet, pins nested in a ceramic dish shaped like a leaf. On a corkboard, the important papers rested like framed prayers, temporary guardianship granted in the early years, adoption finalized 2 years after, inspections passed, vaccinations managed. The ordinary bureaucracy of love turned official by ink. Every morning, the basement lifted into life. The smell of starch and soap and cinnamon toast rose like gentle weather. The twins, 8 years old and mirror bright, mapped their worlds in crayons and small collections. He with words and tally marks. She with buttons sorted by shade in the satisfactions of symmetry. Liam, wide-eyed and precise, had the chipped tooth of someone who had attempted speed where carefulness was advised. Lila, tender-eyed and watchful, carried the moon on her face. The crescent birthmark curved near her left eye like a signature only night recognizes. They moved through the studio as if it were a country they trusted, stepping around the floor's unevenness and the sewing machine's sacred radius, learning the seriousness of needles and the forgiveness of fabric. The city above stretched itself awake. Street vendors tested tongs and lighters. A cat leapt from milk crate to windowsill. Buses sighed against curbs. Claire walked the children to school through this choreography of beginnings, counting breaths with the traffic lights, admiring a mural she had passed so often it felt like an old friend. 3 figures holding hands over a skyline, their forms woven with thread painted in looping strokes. When she hugged the twins goodbye, she gave them a ritual she'd invented on a scared night years before. 1 hug for now, 1 for emergencies, 1 for luck. They believed in it as one believes in lighthouses. She returned to the basement and threaded the needle again. Every stitch promised something simple and enduring, that whatever frayed can be mended, that wear is a map of use, that love is more logistics than lightning. She sewed until the ache in her back felt earned. Then she stretched, drank lukewarm coffee, and sketched a dress she had dreamed of. Soft navy fabric with stitching that glimmered faintly, like constellations visible only when you have learned to look beyond glare. She called it, privately, the night shift dress, because it honored the people who kept the city breathing while nobody watched. Nurses, cleaners, cooks, bus drivers, security guards, delivery cyclists, all those who walked the late corridors with tired eyes and steady hands. Across town, a tower of glass and nerve cut into the sky. In its highest rooms, where the city lay like a map and decisions rearranged economies, a man stood very still and tried to breathe without remembering. Alexander Monroe, founder and CEO of Threadline, was the kind of person other people described in verbs, drives, builds, executes, scales. He could measure time in quarterly wins. He could dress an argument in data and win a boardroom by subtraction. Yet none of this returned what had been taken from him on a storm night 8 years ago, when an evacuation order, a blackout, and a procedural tangle had turned fatherhood into a question with no answer. Records duplicated themselves like anxious ghosts, transfer slips contradicted, faces blanched, nights lengthened, days set hard and cold. On a sleepless week that had become his custom, he scrolled through posts, searching for young designers who could make Threadline feel less like a machine and more like a pulse. The image stopped him. The night shift dress shimmered under a warm light, stitched with a subtlety that suggested respect more than spectacle. Behind the designer, a young woman, dark hair escaping its clip, eyes bright with effort. 2 children ran through the frame, laughing in a way that made memory lurch. A twin pair, boy and girl, about 8. The girl's left cheek held the faintest crescent moon. The mind obeys a sequence: denial, then fear, then a kind of underwater listening. He felt the old hospital corridor tilt under his feet. He remembered the neonatal ward's beeping machines, the whispered assurances, the sudden outage when the storm cut the grid, the evacuation rolling forward like a misread script. He remembered writing a note because a nurse told him that voices can live inside bodies, even tiny ones, and that words spoken in desperation sometimes anchor, keep them together. I'm here. He left the note tucked into the fold of a blanket. Later, the blanket vanished with the babies into paperwork's blind corner. Years teach you to stand up and go to work. Work teaches you how to avoid questions. Avoidance teaches you a silence that can pass for composure. But a small crescent of skin on a stranger's face unstitched his composure as easily as a loose thread invites a seam to surrender. He brought the designer to the tower because that was a reason the world would understand. The invitation itself arrived in the basement like a foreign bird. Naomi Voss, a talent scout who moved through rooms with the ease of someone who never pushed a door that didn't want to open, descended the stairs with a portfolio and a promise. A residency, 6 months, stipend, childcare included. The words landed like an offered hand from a cliff's edge. Threadline tower made the children wide-eyed and careful at once. Glass and light, marble and metal, the murmurs of busy genius. Inside the atelier, half-made garments stood like future selves considering their options. Scissors lay in gleaming pairs like silver fish. Chalk whispered along seams. Steam rose in measured size from presses that released wrinkles like old grudges. The studio's light was the kind that flatters effort. Clean, honest, structural. Claire moved among these instruments as if she'd been invited into a cathedral. She touched a roll of midnight blue wool as if listening for its weather. She rearranged pins into little constellations. She stood at a window and watched the city fold its own pattern of movements below. A man approached then, not as a headline but as a person, tired in a dignified way, attentive as if attention had become a discipline he was relearning. Something unsaid filled the space between them, a sense that their lives had been traveling on parallel tracks and the tracks had decided to meet. The days gathered themselves into a tender routine. Claire designed a capsule collection that kept its gaze on people rather than profit margins. She called the series Night Shift Stories and let each garment carry the philosophy of its wearer. Pockets that held more than phones, fabrics that refused to punish movement, stitches that told truths in low light. The children came after school sometimes and drew beside the large tables, inventing sleeve shapes that imagined sunrises and buttons that told jokes. The employees, at first amused, found their own shoulders lowering, their own afternoons lifting, their own conversations shifting toward gentler architectures. Monroe became a fixture not as a financier, but as a witness. He learned to watch hands, not screens. He learned to hear the differences between a needle moving through cotton and a needle meeting denim. Learned the quick inhaled breath people take when a hem lands perfectly. He began to ask questions with the curiosity of someone who had remembered that wonder is not irresponsible. The twins gravitated toward him with the innocent, uncalculated trust of children, toward a calm they recognized, toward a quiet that did not threaten, toward a man who moved carefully in rooms where care was rare. But within Monroe, a larger movement deepened. He began to search the way a tide returns ashore, whether welcomed or not. He called a lawyer with instructions for a request that was not a demand, but a hope. Unseal what can be unsealed. Request what can be requested. Look for a church named St. Bridget. Look for a transfer log during the storm. Look for a note. The process unfolded in lawful increments. Somewhere in a file that had slept for nearly a decade, a clerk's margin note mentioned a crescent mark on a newborn's child. Somewhere else, a duplicate transfer form bore the wrong initials and a timestamp that made a nurse's testimony make sense. The system that had lost them now confessed how it had done so. By error, by collision of urgency, by everyone's best intentions colliding in a dark corridor. He did not rush the telling. He understood that truth can bruise if delivered without gentleness. He planned to approach Claire with care and with choice. Then the world moved faster than the heart's schedule. A photographer, unaffiliated and opportunistic, captured a moment in the atelier. Monroe steadying a stool while Lila reached for a roll of ribbon. Liam presenting a drawing with the stabilized pride of a child who knows he did something excellent. The image escaped its context and arrived in the public square, where context is an endangered species. Commentary rose like weather. The story bent itself into familiar shapes that erased their complexity. In the basement, the noise reached Claire's phone and then her pulse. She hovered between the primal need to protect and the learned habit of trusting the work. In the tower, Monroe felt the old panic of loss knock against his ribs and understood that avoidance was, itself, a form of repeating history. At dusk, under the roof garden, where potted lemon trees held small suns in their leaves, and the city inhaled the blue hour, they met with the mutual recognition of people who have outlived their fear of silence. He offered the story. Not a justification, stories that begin with justification rarely become truth, but a plain account of a night where power failed and procedures failed, and the fragile math of new life was miscounted. He spoke of a note tucked into a blanket. He spoke of years spent building a fortress of measurable outcomes because nothing immeasurable would answer him. She listened the way suists listen to fabric tearing, alert, grieving, already preparing to mend. When grief belongs to everyone, it chooses no enemy. What remained after the wind softened and the city lit its first precincts of neon was a promise to move carefully through the next steps. Lawful, kind, deliberate. No sirens, no storms. The court, when requested by counsel carrying mutual consent, unsealed what could be unsealed. The language was clinical and devastating. The dates aligned with the lives now unfolding. A test was set. 5 days stretched with the long elasticity of meaningful time. Claire held the children's routine steady, school and snacks, and the reading of books where lighthouses did what they were meant to do. Monroe learned the specific gravity of small errands, pickup lines and shoe tying, and the sacred trust of carrying a backpack that holds a world's worth of treasures and crumbs. On a quiet afternoon washed with pearly light, the call arrived. Probability passed out. Biology unnamed for years now named. The word father did not thunder. It settled like mist, and then like dew, and then like water someone could actually drink. In the studio that evening, among the spools and papers and the old singer that had shouldered so much, the note returned to the table. Keep them together, I'm here. It was not a spell. It was a vow that had been waiting for the second half of itself. Forgiveness did not appear like a banner. It sprouted with the patient indifference of green things. It asked for watering and shade, for a little trimming when it threatened to tangle. Claire kept the old studio because roots insist. Threadline funded safety where safety mattered, leaving the soul untouched. A proper fire extinguisher. Shelving that did not wobble. Lighting that did not hum at anxious frequencies. A toaster that finally delivered its small thunderclap with confidence. The children kept their rituals and made new ones. They began a button jar for the city's seasons, a Tuesday tradition of pancakes for dinner, a Friday game of mapping subway lines onto the veins of a leaf. At Threadline, change arrived not as a pivot, but as a correction. Monroe stepped away from the shimmer to hold the substance. The Night Shift Stories collection premiered not on a runway flanked by cameras, but in a community center lit with those flattering, honest lights. Models walked who had stood a different kind of watch. A nurse whose shoes had learned the miles of 3 a.m. A janitor poet who folded reflections into stanzas between floors. A bus driver who could tell time by the faces of riders. A short order cook whose wrists bore the sunburst scars of hot oil and persistence. The clothes did what clothes should do. They made people feel seen without asking them to become anyone else. Naomi, who had opened this particular seam in time, remained at its edge with steady hands. She scheduled with a ferocity devoted to gentleness, kept the press where it belonged, returned the attention toward the clothes and the people for whom they were designed. When investors grumbled about optics, she translated the argument into numbers that equaled longevity and into sentences that equaled dignity. Care, she explained, compounds. Family as a definition became less useful than family as a verb. There were appointments that howled for rescheduling and breakfasts that forgot themselves into lunches and Saturdays that unspooled into repairs of bicycles and stuffed animals. And the faintly noble cloth tiger, whose right ear had been reattached so many times it had more lives than thread. Monroe learned the choreography of small hands and big feelings, the art of packing snacks with the same precision he once reserved for negotiations. He learned that wonder is not a liability, but an instrument, that grace can be practiced like scales, that children will teach you the geography of your own capacity to stay. He and Claire did not reshape their lives with declarations as much as with the everyday repetition of showing up. The legal architecture followed where the emotional one already stood, a shared arrangement that honored what had been built and invited what could be grown. A judge witnessed paperwork that, for once, did not disguise a loss but recorded a choice. The children did what children do when the adults have done their work. They kept playing. They absorbed love as if their bones had been designed for it, which they had. In the months that followed, the city cycled through its wardrobes. Spring loosened the air. Trees performed their soft green arguments along the avenues. Puddles filled with small continents made of oil and rainbow. Summer arrived with the scent of cut grass and hot metal. Block parties and hydrants and the chorus of distant music until late. Autumn rehearsed endings kindly. Leaves scrolled themselves into poems and fell in satisfying quantities. Sweaters returned with their familiar sleeves. Winter learned restraint. The basement grew cozier. The kettle became an oracle. The sewing machine sang in the evenings like an old friend telling a favorite story. Claire continued to work with the same creed that had carried her through lean years. That the seam is not merely functional, but philosophical. That repair is a kind of prayer. That a pocket placed properly can change the day of a person who needed a place to put their hands while deciding not to cry. She found herself sometimes pausing with a piece of fabric draped over her palms, remembering the storm night when the twins had arrived with a note that had been a lighthouse. She understood now that the note had traveled farther than its author knew, that it had threaded itself through the years until it reached the place where it could be read fully. Not a promise to the void, but a promise delivered into a room where two children drew runways in crayon and a man placed his phone face down because clouds were making better conversation. The city, as cities do, forgot and remembered in equal measure. People moved on to other stories. The internet shed its attention like old skin. But in quieter corners, the night shift stories continued to arrive where they were needed. A dress that let a nurse stand all night without pain. A jacket that kept a bus driver warm when doors opened to the cold. Pants that gave a janitor the ease to work and the pride to walk home, feeling addressed by beauty rather than tolerated by it. The garments became what good tools become, unremarkable in the best way, invisible in their success. On a late winter afternoon, snow arrived in drifting hesitations, not yet committed, as if remembering how weather used to behave. Claire closed the studio early and watched the twins press their hands to the glass, leaving perfect handprints that would soon fade. Monroe came by with bags of groceries in that careful stillness of someone learning how to enter a room that is both his and not his at once. They cooked together without speaking much, arranging the ordinary into an altar. Onions sweating in a pan, a kettle arguing itself into a boil, a small chaos of cups that did not match. The cloth tiger supervised from the shelf with his tilted courage. Later, when the twins had claimed the couch with the entitlement of cats, when the city had dimmed into a quiet stitched with sirens and the low rumble of a distant train, Claire looked around the room and understood something simple and irreversible. The storm had not gifted her this life. It had tried to take it. The gift had been the decision, repeated daily, to keep choosing tenderness when fear proposed alternatives. The gift had been other people who chose too. There would be difficulties, of course. People are not fabric, and even fabric has biases. Even a sewing machine jams when a thread sulks. There would be days when calendars snarled and feelings spoke in languages no one understood. But mending had taught her patience. She believed in seams. She believed in reinforcement where stress accumulates. She believed in letting the light through cracks, not because the crack is beautiful, but because the light needs somewhere to enter. Monroe, sitting nearby with a book he had pretended to read, looked up occasionally as if marking a horizon he did not want to lose. He had learned that redemption is not a stage on which one bows, but a shift in posture, quieter, humbler, replenishing. He had learned that leadership at work could borrow from love at home. and that love at home could borrow from the steadiness learned at work, and that both failed without listening. He kept, in his wallet, not a photograph, but a list of dates and small victories. The day the child who distrusted him first offered a hand as they crossed a street. The morning he braided hair so clumsily, it achieved a new category of success. The afternoon he fixed a jammed bobbin without being asked. The evening he hired a small crew of night shift workers as paid advisors to a line that bore their name. He had learned to inventory the right things. Spring again. The community center buzzed with preparations for another night shift showcase, this time less about unveiling and more about honoring what had continued. Models laughed in the mirror like regular people because they were regular people. The children ran in the hall and were told to slow down and pretended, magnificently, to forget. Naomi stood at the back counting chairs and taking calls and silently, fiercely protecting the perimeter, where ordinary life could stay ordinary. The collection walked in the generous light of a room that had hosted countless local events, bingo nights, and voter drives and dance recitals made of bravery. Applause gathered not for celebrity, but for recognition. When the last garment circled, the room rose to its feet, not as an audience, but as a neighborhood. In one corner, a man with tired hands cried in the undramatic way that means relief. In another, a teenager filmed not for followers, but for memory. On stage, Claire bowed once and then stepped aside so the models could stand in a line and absorb the moment they had built together. After, the evening softened into conversations at folding tables. Someone brought a tray of cookies. Someone else brewed coffee too strong, which was perfect. A little girl asked if she could touch the hem of a dress because it glittered like midnight. A bus driver showed a photo of his route when the sun rises and all the windows catch fire. The janitor poet recited a few lines about empty rooms that keep secrets for tired people and how mops have learned the steps of every waltz ever danced after hours. No one hurried. The city could wait. Later still, back in the basement that had become not smaller but more itself, Claire placed the note into a simple frame and hung it where the light would catch it every morning. Keep them together. I'm here. It no longer felt like an echo from a terrified hallway. It felt like a present tense sentence, a compass almost sentence. The kind you can carry in a pocket beside a lucky coin. The kind that wears smooth because you touch it often. The sewing machine, faithful in particular, began to purr again. She fed it fabric and intention. Outside, the city practiced the old miracle of being many things at once. Hard and kind, merciless and merciful, loud and capable of silence. Inside, 4 people practiced the newer miracle of belonging without ownership. Love, she understood, is not a headline. It is the daily decision to repair what wears with use. It is thread-thin, stubborn, ordinary. It does not announce itself, but if you follow it carefully, you will find that it holds everything together from the inside. And somewhere at the edge of sleep, in a room that had learned to hold more than one kind of history, a child breathed in even breath. A cat settled into a lap it trusted, a kettle cooled, a city exhaled, and a note kept its promise. Keep them together. I'm here. Some families are written by blood and birth. Others are sewn by patience, choice, and the gentle courage to keep showing up when storms insist you hide. Second chances do not erase the first draft. They illuminate the margins and teach the hand to write softer. If this story placed a little light in your night, pass it on. Somewhere, someone needs to remember that endings are often beginnings wearing different clothes, and that the smallest thread, held with care, can lead you home.